Hello YouTube, it's Brian Phillips here again. You remember this wonderful plane that I got just a few days ago? And I was all annoyed that it got damaged here, and here, and here, and here, because kind of crappy packaging, and then crappy decals. Other than that, it seems like it's pretty good. Oh, and then the ding in the nose. I got the rest of my plane, so I'm excited to put it together. This is such a simple thing. I think it's going to take just a short time to do it. And you see this little dent? I was going to tell you how I'm going to resolve all these little dents and stuff, which you guys have seen the method before. Now it's just kind of applying it to this plane. And I'm actually kind of excited to see it come together. But here's the rest of the goodies. Let's see what we got here. I want to use scissors for this. Good Lord. I think it's taped like death tape. Okay. Okay, so it looks like we've got some more packaging in here. Oh, look at this. It's an A3L. This is a stabilizer, guys. And then this is something new for me. I've used an A3L before on my foam core plane. Actually, it's not on the F-22. I use, Esteban has that on his MiG-29. And then this is I think it's a Redcon receiver, if I'm saying that right. Yeah, Redcon. And I've never used one of these before, but I've heard they're decent. I'll link to these in the description. And I'll link to this in the description too. And to be perfectly honest, guys, I was really disappointed with the way this thing was packaged. But it's probably going to turn out to be a pretty fun little plane. And for the amount of money it costs, dealing with this sort of thing is just sort of part of the gamut of that price point. You know, if you want to spend $280, you can get a really nice plane, or you can spend a lot less than that and get something like this. But anyway, these things do add up a little bit, so just a heads up. The cool thing is, if you destroy something like this after you've played with it for a while, then you can take these things out with relative ease, move them over to your next model. So that's the thinking there. We're going to go through a build and setup video, and you guys can follow along here on this channel. I just wanted to show you that. And this will just be an addendum to our unboxing. I'm sorry, I thought this was all coming in the same box, but I was mistaken. So no big deal. It took another 5 or 6 days to get these. They must have been coming from a different warehouse. But at any rate, I'll have links for you guys to go buy it. And do definitely follow along in the build video. It's going to be a relatively easy build video, but the A3L, which is made by Hobby Eagle, is just a stabilizer. It's not a stabilizer with a receiver like my Lemon RX 7 channels with receivers that I like. Excuse me, 7-channel receivers with stabilization. Those are my go-to. This is going to be an alternate. We're going to see how it turns out. And I like the price point, so we'll see. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Brian Phillips here. Definitely check the links in the description below. And watch the rest of the build series. I'll have the links there for you as well. Alright, Brian Phillips here again. We're working on the Rare Bear. This is part of the Mini Warbirds lineup from Sky Angels. You can see the specs here if you really want to read it. It's small, which is pretty cool. So almost, I wouldn't say UMX size, but here we'll compare it to like a 1.2 meter Warbird. You can see it's quite a bit smaller. Typically smaller planes are harder to fly. So if you're watching this video thinking, hey, I can buy this, it's cheap, it'll be a good starter plane, I'm kind of guessing it's not going to be any of those things. The other thing is, as you remember from my unboxing, there was some damage. So I've kind of given up on just even not worrying about the way these decals look because they're just crap. So in this case, you know me, I'm going to show you the way I find it. I did talk to the people that sent it to me, and I asked him, I said, do you want to send another one and just see if we have better luck? And he said, if he thinks, you know, if you think it's going to fly, just go ahead with it. I said, okie dokie, whatever you say, man. But you can see it's coming off like instantaneously, this decal. And honestly, I wasn't crazy about the decals anyway, so probably not a big deal. I'll probably have to repaint this, or we'll use this this wing tape. This stuff's super thin but really strong. And we can do some highlights because I want to be able to see this thing is going to be a fast flyer. Now, these little damage points annoy me, so I'm going to just work through what I'm going to do to fix them. And once we get these damaged points back to a suitable state, then we'll go ahead and start the build process, which is going to be fairly easy. You can see we got a pretty significant divot here, and that was just because they wrapped a piece of cardboard to hold this. Oh, and then these dents here, I want to try to get those out too. So just taking my fingernail, just kind of rubbing the inside of the plastic there. You get a pretty significant amount of that dent out of there. This is you know, like that plastic that you get when you're building a stick-built plane. You know, like one of these. You get those little plastic pieces and you have to trim them out for the cowling and for the wheel pants and things like this. So it's not a super, you know, high quality piece, but I think a little bit of heat would go a long ways. I'm just not sure if I want to try a hair dryer or if I want to go a little bit hotter. I think I'm going to go a little hotter. So I'm going to take this torch, get some heat coming out. I'm going to find something that has the shape that I like to kind of mimic this shape. Honestly, a spoon would work nicely. I just don't want to discolor a spoon that belongs to my wife's kitchens, because then I might end up homeless. Okay, so this is about as big as I had. I don't care if I discolor this thing. So I'm just going to get that nice and toasty. I'm smelling it for the temperature. Okay, so it's hot enough. I can tell that the heat is transferring through the plastic a little bit. And I don't know if you guys can see that little minor discoloration where I'm actually rubbing it. Okay, so heating it up a little bit just to reheat it a little bit. Put my thumb here so I have a heads up on how hot it's actually getting. That took most of that damage out, but there's still a little bit of a ridge there. So that's what I'm trying to take out now. Now this stuff will get hot quick and it'll cool quick too, so you got to be careful. This is an annoying step. And when you deal with these, you know, these cheaper Chinese products, you kind of got to take the good with the bad. And when I say the good with the bad, I don't agree that you should have to tolerate damage. But in my case, it's a little bit of a different situation. If I had to tell you, if you get one of these, there's a good chance you're going to have the same damage points. Is it minor? Oh yeah, super minor. I mean, a couple minutes to get this squared up or flattened out or whatever you want to, however you want to describe that. It's probably not that big a deal, but it's still annoying that you have to do it. I'd be pissed if it was a $300 plane, but this isn't a $300 plane, guys. Let's just be real. And it just happens to be in a prominent spot, which is not cool. Okay, so we kind of have that more or less smooth now. And we've re-taught the plastic some memory, so hopefully it won't just keep going back to that same dent position. You guys can be the judges as to whether or not you think I got that good enough. I think I got it good enough, and that's what matters because I'm filming. Okay, you see this, guys? So that little separation there on that inboard portion of the wing, I'm just going to go a little CA on that. A little CA. Foam Safe CA. We always have links to this stuff. I really like the Bob Smith Industries variety. The tips like to seize up on me all the time. You can use this product here. This is acetone nail polish remover. You can take the tips off and actually put them into a jug like this, and it will clean the tip out. You just got to give it a day or so, and it'll just be perfect like brand new. But in my case, I just prefer to use the drill because it's a lot faster. I don't want to dink around with it usually, but when these tips get really bad, I'll throw them into here. This is just like a vitamin gummy bottle. Make sure you don't let the kids have that back. And then I dump them into a little cutoff. That happens to be a cup from Wendy's. So as you can see, there we go, finally. It's been a little bit since I used this CA, so sometimes it'll get up into the nozzle badly like that. Okay, so I'm going to use this kicker, and I want a run-of-the-mill toothpick, and I'm just going to control and position this. Just run that CA where I want it. You notice I didn't spray because it takes a million times more of this kicker. And by the way, we got links to this stuff too. Stuff's good. And the stuff I'm linking to, it's about the same price you're going to be paying if you order it elsewhere. I'm sure you could find a steal somewhere, but sometimes when the deals aren't out, it's better to just buy it. Support the channel that you love so much. Okay, so just pushing that out of the way, guys. Take this little tip. You can just kind of roll that in and under. And remember, this is just kind of getting this model back to the way it should have been. That's annoying steps for me. Okay, so I'm making that gap about what I want, and then I'm just going to touch this with the back half of that. Okay, so that's going to make the CA set up real quick. Okay, so I'm sure it's more or less where it needs to be. I'm going to flip this over now, and we'll just kind of repeat the process here. You're probably wondering to yourself, why are you concerning yourselves with such a minor detail? Well, I don't know. I don't want to start with like a loosey-goose little piece like this. That just annoys me. That's why I was so dejected in my first video, because I knew I would end up fixing it. Because let's be honest, who wants to wait for the shipping twice, right? Okay, so that's more or less fixed on the back end. No, it's not perfect, but yes, it's plenty good for what we're doing. And it looks like there might be a little slice there. Honestly, that part actually would make an aerodynamic effect, so I want to make sure I get the glue down between those two pieces. That's why I'm using the manipulator. A little bit of kicker. We're just going to smooth things out, and we're going to go around to the back side. Once you get the front done, you go to the back. It's complicated. Okay, so a little kicker ran around, but I'm going to still do a little bit more. So as you can see, it's not perfect, but it'll be fine for what we're doing. These decals are going to deteriorate with some flight. The other thing is, when I choose my color scheme and everything, I'll make sure that I obstruct that little bit of damage there. Remember, keep your tip clean. It's important skills for life. Okay, so that's ready to rock and roll for the next use. Now let's address this little bit of damage here. It should be super easy. I'll show you the way I'm going to deal with it. You guys can do it however you want, but this is my bag that we've been using to carry tools out to the land. Like the machete and the stakes. That's from the bridge project, guys. Pretty awesome stuff if you haven't seen it. Okay, hot water, get it warm. This is best to be done while your wife is not watching, okay? So you're going to take, hey, it's an apprentice. That's pretty cool. Okay, so fill it up like 3/4 of the way. Put it in the microwave. This is not magic, people. Just watch. 1 minute, not enough. So I set it to 4 minutes, okay? There's the apprentice. Ooh, fancy. While that's warming up, I'm probably going to pause the video, but just so you know my game plan, when we come back, we'll go ahead and soak this sponge. Right now it's cold. It had some cold water in it. That's kind of a gross feeling. And we're just going to more or less kind of lay that around this area. And we're going to repeat that process on both sides to get rid of this little damage here. Just so you guys can see what we're dealing with. And then once that's done, we should be ready to rock and roll. And we're going to actually set up our Redcon receiver. We're going to bind it to the DX18, get the control surfaces set up, and then we'll go ahead and install the A3L. But what I'll do is I'll install this, get everything working, and then we can go over to this. And we should be able to, I think we can support flaperons on this, but if not, it'll change the way we set this up. This has a dual diversity antenna, which is pretty cool. And I'm not sure if you guys know what I mean when I say dual diversity. I just mean two antennas. Okay, two antennas that can be purposefully located in a manner that will accept the most radio interference at a certain range. Okay. In our case, it's 2.4 gigahertz, and that's incidentally, if you didn't already know, why these certain length is exposed on certain types of antennae. Okay, so it looks like that's the part number. We'll be linked to this, so just check the link below. And then this, of course, is the A3L. We might as well go ahead and open it while we're waiting for the water to cook. Okay, so the A3L, oh, and this is the instructions. Totally useless instructions, as usual. Okay. If you want to look at this, you can. I'll just kind of... They are suggesting to lightly sand the joint areas before insertion. Look, a battery. Place the battery in the fuselage, but do not connect it at this stage. Okay. Fancy. 30 millimeters back for the CG. That's an important thing, okay, guys? We could also mark that now, too. And they're saying that the deflection should be 3.5 centimeters on the right aileron and left aileron, I presume. And then about 4 millimeters on the elevator. Okay, I don't typically worry about that. I just make them move as much as I want, and then I set up the expo to give me the type of responsiveness that I feel is acceptable. Okay, so this is pretty cool. This A3 comes with a double-sided sticky pad, like 3M tape, it looks like. Comes with these extension cords, which are male to male, so you can go between this and then from this to this, and then from this you will feed out to the servos. And this is a capacitor, my friends. It is a 3300 milli microfarad, 16 volts. So this thing is rated for a 3S configuration. Okay, and when I say 3S, that's sort of stupid because really you're dealing with the BEC voltage, which is going to be about 5 volts. On this configuration, I assume it's a 5 volt BEC. It might be 5.5 volts, but you would not want to exceed 16 volts on your control level voltage. Now, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, that's the voltage that comes across the brown and the red lead here. The signal, of course, is carried through the yellow. Okay, that is true in parallel for all of the control surfaces. Right? If you don't know what I'm talking about, you'll have to watch a lot more videos to get up to speed. But as you can see here, there's 2 pins here, right? Or 2 sockets in this case. And look at that. They're in parallel, okay? They're going to be in parallel when this is hooked up. So what you can do is you can hook that in with a Y channel anywhere in the circuit, and it will help to avoid brownouts, which can be caused by having a stabilizer that causes your servos to jostle around more frequently than a normal environment. Pretty cool, guys. Eagle Series Flight Controller. Gain 1, gain 2. And then this is your Redcon receiver. It looks like it will receive a satellite. Of course, this runs in DSMX. So, cool. I heard my alarm go off on the microwave. So we're going to jump back into our repair. Yeah, that's hot. So, a couple different ways you can handle this. I'll let you guys figure out what's safest for you. You'll notice it doesn't appear to be boiling. Well, it would be boiling if it were allowed to do so. Because watch this, guys. This is kind of cool. If this was dry, it'd be more exaggerated, but watch. Oh, it didn't quite boil. But you see it bubbling a little bit? It's very hot. So now, I'm just going to drip a little bit onto that area. You know what? I'm actually going to get a tool, because that thing is going to be ridiculously hot. And I don't like getting burned. Down you go. See it bubbling and boiling, and maybe another minute and this thing would be boiling over. It did boil in the microwave a little bit. Okay, so we're just going to set that right there, and I'm actually going to grab this for a little added pressure. Okay, we're going to let that work for just a second. And see, I got the rag under there to capture the water. And we're just going to try to get that to come out. My guess is it's so much damage that it may not want to come out. But you can see it's coming out a little bit. So let's jump over to the other side for a minute. As you can see, I can hold this in my hand. That means it's probably not quite hot enough. You're probably thinking, boy, that's a lot of water to be getting on your electronic airplane. Sure it is, but it's not going to be getting into the electronics. It's just getting on the foam. Okay, so there you have it, guys. So that one's just about fixed. I'd like to maybe get a little bit more heat on this one, so I'm going to flip it upside down. Now you got to be careful about the leads. And then grab yourself a towel or something that can kind of keep that heat where it belongs for a minute. We're going to let that work. And we'll jump back over to this part of it. Okay, so just real quick, throttle, aileron, elevator, rudder, gear, auxiliary 1, auxiliary 2, and then PPM, which would be like your, if you were using an S-Bus or whatever. I don't know a lot about that stuff, actually. So we're going to turn on the radio. In my case, this is a DX18, so it's 18 channels. This is a Gen 1 Mode 2. Mode 2 meaning that throttle's here. That's ailerons, elevator, and rotor. And then all sorts of other stuff can be controlled here. I'm set up in the Apprentice right now. I'm going to scroll down to System Setup. Yes. Model Select. All the way down to the bottom. Add New Model. I want to create. Aircraft type, flaperons, tail type is normal. I want to change the picture to one that's suitable. Trying to think the best way to do this one. Probably do that one. Looks pretty close. Sort of. No, it doesn't. That's probably more like it. Okay, so now we can go back to the main screen. We can set up our flap system to the switch we want, which is B. And we'll just leave them neutral. Actually, we'll set one to like plus 50, and then the other minus 50. And the speed of deployment we'll set to like 1 second. Okay, so you can see ailerons. See how they change, just like if I were to move the stick. Okay, so we'll go to neutral, and then from neutral you'll see that they both change. Okay, so now the second thing I want to set up is throttle cut. I'm going to set it to this like I usually do. I do not want negative 130, I want negative 100. Okay, so now when throttle cut's on, See how throttle output is right here? When it's off, I can give it full throttle, whatever I want to do. Okay, so that's set up. And then we're going to do timer. We're going to set the timer to 5 minutes because we have no clue how long. I do want it active with a tone vibrate. Okay, so that means one time, meaning as soon as I pass by 25%, it turns on and stays on. So you'll notice it's counting. I can clear the timer to reset it, and anytime I go past 25, it starts the timer. Then when I hear that alarm, I land. And then we evaluate what the voltages are. Okay, so we've got pretty much the basic setup done. We'll have to probably reverse some of the throws. There's no rudder in this plane, so it's just a bank and yank, meaning the ailerons will roll the plane, and then the elevator will push up or down. Pretty simple. Okay, so we'll clear the timer, we'll shut this off. Throttle cuts on just as a good safety measure. The gear switch is just whatever gear switch setting I needed for the last plane. The last plane I flew, I believe was, what was the last one? Oh, it was a Spitfire, because you guys had that video the other night. All right, let's see if this foam has come out at all. Not much. We're probably gonna have to reheat the water. But as you can see, it's not maybe as egregious as it was when we first started, but there's still a little bit of a split. Again, not really my favorite moment to have to be fixing the stuff on a new plane, but it is what it is. So we're just going to run that a little bit again. Typically, you don't want to get your pliers wet. That is not a good thing, even when you get these high quality ones like this. That was a joke, folks. All right, so we'll just get this stuff cleaned up, and we'll come right back to you. I just didn't want you guys to think I was going to neglect my tool, because you don't want to neglect your tools, otherwise you'll end up with crappy tools. I knew you were thinking that. Alright guys, so we got 29 seconds left, and it's not quite bubbling over, so we're getting really close, and then we'll be able to hopefully treat this. See, you see the bubbles just started? So that's about perfect. Make sure the rag you're using is dry so you don't get burned, and grab it where there's not water and you won't get burned. Just be careful doing this, because it is in the echelon of danger of the sport of RC aircraft flying. See, that's what I'm talking about. There we go. That should be better. This is one of the more dangerous things, believe it or not. See, that was hot, guys. More startling than burning. So as you can see with this sponge, you can really get that stuff to come out of there. Don't really want to get it into the connector, but it's not like the end of the world if there was some moisture get in there. See, it's coming out of it a little bit. You can see the difference that little bit of temperature made. And you can also use a steam gun if you guys have a steam gun. You can also use an iron to do this, but I found it to be much easier to control with hot water. And dang it, that's annoying. Okay, so we're gonna let this sit, and we're just gonna dump right on top of it. Yeah. I'm just gonna let that go. Okay. So now, just to keep things simple, we're going to do that for a minute. Come right back to it. Okay, so our next step is going to be to actually wire this little thing up. So we're going to plug into the throttle channel, and it looks like the bind plug is down here. So we'll go ahead and plug in the bind port with the supplied bind plug. We'll get this ready. It's not on, but we're going to verify that we're in the correct model. And on a Spectrum, then you'll just look. Okay, so this is Acro. So let's go to System Setup, yes. And let's go to the model name. And this is called the Rare Bear, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll that in. Seems like the alphabet always goes the wrong direction. See, every time I press clear, it changes what I'm dealing with. Okay, Rare Bear, and then this one is 535 millimeters long and 620 millimeters, so we could call it a .62. Because I've learned that in my experience with planes, you kind of got to put sizes in here because you're probably going to end up with another Rare Bear at some point, a different size. The special characters are my favorite because they're really easy to skip over the one you need. Oh, come on. Where is that little decimal? There it is. 0.62. And I normally wouldn't bore you with this particular step just because it is extremely boring stuff. But look at that. Now you can see how that's done. And then when you back out, of course, the model will say Rare Bear 0.62. Okay, cool. So that's ready to be bound. And as usual, we'll give you the, doesn't look like we're going to get it. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It looks like this one we lost, which is not the end of the world. We'll come back here in a minute and show you the next step. Okay, so what I'm going to try, and I normally don't like to let these little projects get the best of me. They do get a lot of my time, but I don't like to let them win. And when I say win, I mean if I go and set my mind at fixing a problem like this stupid dent, I don't just give up when the hot water method doesn't work. I will spend tons and tons of wasted time trying to fix something that doesn't matter, but I'm still going to do it anyway for your viewing pleasure. So just taking, oh no, guys. Oh, I screwed myself up. Look at this. I shrunk the plastic with my heat method. Dang it. Well, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. I think I lost on that one. In this case, I still would like to see this a little better and that a little better. And you can see how it rippled. That's no biggie because you can flatten that with your thumb. Just give it a little bit of pressure and flatten it, and you're good to go. So this is an iron that's used to cover like monocoat or whatever coatings you would put onto like the Bird of Time over here, any stick-built model like that. So I'm just getting it a little bit warm. I can smell it now trying to work. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to release this foam, okay? This foam will actually puff out. And once it puffs out, then you can just smooth it back to where it needs to be. And there's a million different ways to heat up foam. So as you can imagine, all these little balls that they drop into the mold get expanded. And then you end up with a full mold, which is in the shape of a Rare Bear or whatever plane you're dealing with. So all you're doing is you're trying to get this foam ball back to its natural state, or unnatural state, however you want to look at it. So now I'm just applying enough heat until this little bump comes out, and it is probably going to work, but you do have to acknowledge that there's a certain level of risk when you try to do repairs to this degree on this quality level of an aircraft. Okay, you see that little bump? I'm trying to get that little spot taken out. And I would normally pause it, but I really want you guys to see that this is truly going to work. See, it is coming out, it's just coming out really tediously slow. I'm going to crank up the temperature just a little bit. Okay. It's getting stickier up against the foam, so that tells me that it's heating it. Okay, so now it's really starting to react with the foam balls. Okay, so I'm going to take the tip and just work the tip into these tip or the side. I'm going to let that heat up the foam. See, it's wanting to kind of ball up. That's what we actually want, believe it or not. Just keep in mind the adjacent surfaces are also going to do that if you're not careful. You can actually do this with open flame too, which sounds ridiculous, I know, but just be real careful if you try that, because you're probably going to melt your wing. See how it's kind of balling up there, guys? And see, we have a little bit of moisture left in that rag. That's a paper towel we dried the bottom of the plane off after we were done with the last step. I'm just going to smooth this out now. If you don't have enough moisture, you may want to get your fingers wet, because then you can smooth this little area. I'm not thrilled with it, but it's okay. And then this thing, there was a little bump on it. I just can't believe I did that. That was so dumb. I'm going to see if I can take it out with this. When it's going like 85 miles an hour, you're not going to be able to tell. But it's still annoying, because the whole rationale behind this was to try to make it look better. Okay, so I'm going to get into that crevice there. And you know what? I might actually fill this in with a different... I'll show you guys a different repair method for this side, because it's just annoying. It's ticking me off now. We'll just give it a second. We'll see if we can get this to relax the foam. My guess is it's probably going to win the battle on this one. Do you hear that noise, guys? This side's kind of cool because you could sort of see it working. These irons are nice though, because you can control the temperature to a certain extent. I just don't think I'm going to get that to relax out enough. Okay, so make sure you shape this before it cools. Okay, just make sure you shape that before it cools. Okay, so there's a couple different trades of thought at this point. You can leave it and hope for the best and just not worry about it, or you can fill it in. And some people will use spackle. I'm not a big fan of spackle, especially not in this spot, because it's going to be kind of a high traffic spot. You're going to end up bumping into it a bunch while you're handling the plane. So I'm actually going to go with my cotton method. And the cotton method is a little bit heavier. The spackle is probably one of the best methods you could use on this, but like I said, I just don't like it for this spot. Foam safe, CA. I don't even think you need foam safe on this foam, to be honest. I think you might be able to get away with that purple cap stuff. Okay, so I'm just putting a dry piece of cotton onto that CA, and we're just going to kind of push it into where we want it to be. Not worrying about the excess. The excess is a good thing, because this stuff will collapse with a little bit more CA. Now we're just going to soak it in. This is where thin CA is kind of handy, like that white cap stuff is thin. This is medium, so it's a gap filling CA. And guys, if you get into this hobby and you're concerned about the cost of CA, you won't go through near as much of it as I do. I can guarantee you that. Just start small, manageable bits, and then when you get a little bit more obsessed, then you can spend more money on your CA. I mean, I'd go through a lot of it. Part of that comes from crashing, part of it comes from mods. Okay, so now I'm concerned about the shape of this, mostly because the aerodynamic effect of the inboard portion of this wing at the wing root, but also I want it to look really good. Okay, so a little bit more CA, and you can still sort of shape this stuff fairly easily. Okay, so now at this point, I can see there's a little bit more of a bump there. I'm partial to using the nozzle for this because the nozzle won't ever, almost never sticks, which is kind of nice. Okay, so we'll just, now don't worry, it's going to look like the dog peed in it, and that's okay. I've clogged the bottom of that with all my gluing. Watch, it's going to change like yellowish. See this? You're not going to get much yellowing today, evidently. Okay, no big deal. So now that CA is set up to where it's not going to be a problem. And you can tell because when the chemical reaction stops, it cools. And that wasn't even that hot, so that's good. Okay, so now our wing is fixed on both sides. I'm satisfied with this. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for what we're doing. I might actually try to shape that just a little bit more. And if you've never tried it before, this kicker works really nice as a lubricant for the styrofoam. If you're trying to push on it and you don't want it to ball up, sometimes you'll rip out the foam chunks. Okay, good times. Great times, guys. So now that we're done fixing this thing, we can go ahead and jump into the actual build portion. Regrettably, I didn't have as good an outcome on that as I'd hoped, but as you can see, it's going to look good in the air, let's put it that way.